Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My wonderful co-host, Daniel Marcus, actually founded Story Hour over 3 years ago in the throes of the pandemic. I should say throes, but it was sort of like the early throes as opposed to the medium throes and the late throes and the ongoing throes that we experience now. Just so that we could, have authors getting together, talking around a virtual campfire. And it's been so much fun. We're back here pretty much every Wednesday. And I would also like to tell you that Story Hour is made possible by a SIFWA Givers Fund grant. So thank you very much, SIFWA, for helping us keep the stories streaming. Welcome back to those of you returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two fabulous writers reading for some favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Maria Haskins and Alice Gauntley. If you can, please consider donating to tonight's featured nonprofits, Greyhaven Gazette. I'll try the other one first. Maybe I can say that one better. Trans Lifeline. That one was easier. Greyhaven Exotic Bird Sanctuary. Story Hour would also like you to remember that the WGA is still striking. And just recently, the studio heads have decided that the best thing to do is to starve out the writers. Yeah, let's see how that goes for you folks, trying to get some of the most creative people in the world to somehow not find a way to outlive whatever you can do to them. Speaking of which, there's this little thing called the Entertainment Community Fund, which provides a safety net for performing arts and entertainment professionals. And that includes a strike fund for the WGA members. And that's at entertainmentcommunity.org. So we didn't start this fight. We're just not going to lose it. So I would also like to say, it's okay to have your camera on if you like. It can be nice for the readers to, see people. And if you're here on the Zoom with us, feel free to just chat right there in the little chat on the right-hand side. If you're on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. And we're sorry that we may not be able to chat with you quite so much in live time, but we do read your comments, every single one. And I would like you to know, what else? I'd like you to know a little bit about Alice Gauntley. Besides that, she has the most amazingly Gothic name since Laura Blackwell. And we were both born with these, right? We didn't make these up, right? I've never met a Blackwell before who was a writer who actually was born with it, but I was. So I like them because they're both very Gothic sounding and also kind of like adverbs. So Alice Gauntley is a writer caught between hope and despair. Her short stories have previously appeared in Dread Machine, The Toronto Star, and Best Canadian Stories 2021, among other publications. She lives in Toronto, Canada, on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. She dreams of the day when she's swept off her feet by her evil doppelganger from a parallel universe. Find her on Twitter at Alice G. Writes. Alice Gauntley, welcome to Story Hour.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. What do you have for us tonight? And do we have content warnings? Do we need to be scared?
I wouldn't say you need to be scared. I will say both of these stories are a bit of a downer, but when I was trying to think of content warnings, I couldn't think of anything in particular, except for they're both just a little sad.
Okay, we're good with sad. It's
Right.
usually children or animals dying that are the things that bother people.
That is fair. That is fair. There's definitely, you know what, I will give a content warning for this first story, which is that it's a bit of a dystopian future and there are some children involved, but there's no death.
All right, well, let's have them.
All right, cool. So I do have two stories for you today. They're both fairly short, so I thought I would bring both of them. I'm going to start with a really short flash piece and then move on to a bit of a longer piece so we can work our way up to longer things over the course of the evening. So this first piece is called Birthday Boys, and it initially appeared in Drabblecast. So I will attempt to do my own story justice reading it, but if you wanted to listen to a much more professional reading, you can go listen to their podcast, which is great, because the story did originally appear in a podcast. But here we go, Birthday Boys. Our birthday was the 1st of March, and for 2 weeks beforehand, it was all Caleb could talk about: cake, presents, and most importantly, whom to invite. He would chatter about it as we did his homework, as we played his video games, as he went to sleep, and I watched over him. Mom had him try different kinds of cakes, and even let me eat some and ask which one I liked best. I liked the carrot cake, but Caleb liked chocolate, so that's the one she scheduled the kitchen to make, fresh for the morning of the party. The presents started arriving the last week of February, and Caleb and I pressed our noses to the window panes to watch the drones descend until they were hidden from view by the trees around the guardhouse. We tried to estimate the size of each package, listing off different things the packages could contain: a new gaming system, a kid's practice gun, the kind of dog you could turn on and off so it wouldn't end up like the last one we'd had. I knew one of those packages was for me as well. I was glad we didn't talk about that one. There was a rule at school that you had to invite everyone in the class to your party, but what everyone did was just open a private chat and invite only their friends. Caleb invited only the boys, and not Justin. I wasn't sure if this was the kind of thing I was supposed to morals correct, so I asked Dad. He patted me too hard in the back and said, "No, kiddo, that's fine." I nodded and waited an uncomfortable 1.4 seconds before his verbal override of my moral sense kicked in. Caleb hadn't been in the same place as anyone in the class for almost 6 months, not since the annual retreat. And even then, some parents had made their kids opt out. I felt desperately jealous when Caleb talked about the school retreats. Thankfully, no one ever noticed, and I followed the procedure I had gotten the year before for bringing myself out of unwanted emotional states. These emotions are not what I am for. They are just an unfortunate side effect of consciousness. It is my job to stop them so I can be good. We were turning 11, so I had access to that level of vocab. Elliot's helicopter touched down at 12:02 on the day of the party, and Lee and Ben arrived soon after in bulky black cars that had to be buzzed through the gates of our compound. The first thing we all did was go down to the basement and play Traitor Attack. I had to be the traitor, but it was still fun. Elliot said his dad was a general and had shot either 500 or 50 traitors. Next year, he said, when I'm old enough to have a gun, I'm going to take it to our fence and wait until I see one outside. He made machine gun noises, and we all joined in. Then we went upstairs and ate pizza. Mom asked Caleb if he wanted me to have some, and he said yes, so I did. When Mom left the room, Lee said, "I put my companion in storage last year. My mom says it's a little kid thing, a security blanket." I stopped eating mid-bite. I glared at Lee since there were no adults around. Caleb couldn't look at me all of a sudden. Then Elliot piped up. "I still have mine," he said, shrugging. Ben nodded. "Me too. It's not just a kid thing. They make companions for grown-ups too." "Yeah," said Lee, "but those ones are girls." Elliot wrinkled his nose. "I don't want a girl companion." "You will when you're older," said Ben. "That's what my dad says. He's got two, but he doesn't keep them on all the time the way I do with mine." "The way you do," he said, looking from Caleb to me and back again. "It's dumb that it's eating pizza, though," said Lee. "They don't need to eat." He smacked the table so hard the paper plates and cups of juice shuffled around like tiles in a puzzle game. Then he took the pizza slice from me and stuffed it into his mouth all at once. As we headed back downstairs, Caleb whispered to me that I was still his friend and he wasn't going to shut me off for a long time. I couldn't help noticing how Lee was out of earshot, though. Dad waited until after the cake was served to come get me. He beckoned me stealthily, like the two of us were doing a magic show and didn't want Caleb to see how the trick was done. I waited 2.6 seconds before following him to the basement, although I wasn't sure why. Dad was opening the box as I came down the stairs. On the side, I could make out snatches of writing: lifelike playmate, offline socialization, dynamic homework help, the companion that grows with your child. I had heard from one of Caleb's other classmates that some families paid people to do their companion transfers for them, but Dad was a DIY guy, so he always did mine himself. I took off my shirt and turned around. I wondered what the changes would be this year. Caleb's body had started changing recently in ways other than the growing taller way. I've been given some knowledge of that, enough to answer Caleb's questions up to a point in case he ever asked me, but I didn't know the ultimate goal of the whole thing, nor did I know if my body would follow the same progression. Dad took my new body out of the box, and I stared at myself, assessing. Nothing looked too different. I just seemed a bit bigger. I wondered if my clothes would still fit. Above us, I could hear Caleb opening presents in the living room. Lee was explaining how some new VR thing worked. I turned my back to Dad and looked down. I knew what to expect by now. His hand started probing the back of my neck, feeling around for the latch. When he found it, the shock of my skull opening up made my eyes widen and my fists clench at my sides. The year we turned 7, Dad asked me if the transfer process hurt. I said yes. He never asked me again. Dad slowly, carefully pulled the slim black box out of my head and set it down on the table. I was plunged into a world without senses. I was nothing but my thoughts, untethered from my body. I could still measure time, so I counted the seconds, 72 in total, before Dad inserted my brain into my new body and closed the back of my new head with a triumphant flourish. You know how this goes, right, kiddo? It'll take about half an hour for everything to sync up, so you just sit tight, okay? Then you can come up and rejoin the party. Dad, I said. My speech was slurred, nakedly robotic. My tonal patterns had not yet synced to my new body's mechanisms. Dad had already climbed the stairs. He turned at the top, hand on the light switch, and looked down at me, standing in the basement, beside my slightly smaller, discarded body. I almost asked if Lee was right, if I was a security blanket. Instead, I said, thanks. He smiled and nodded and turned off the light. Above me, I heard Caleb's voice as he opened another present. Whoa, he said, the latest model. Thank you. That's story number 1. Thank you very much for listening. I actually hadn't read that one in a long time, but it seemed like a good one to bring tonight because I definitely, it seemed short and it seemed like something that I had already put out there on a podcast. So I thought it would be a great one to bring tonight because I felt like it was really readable. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. I have one more story to share with you. And this one is actually one that I am really excited about because recently it's won a contest that I feel like will only mean anything to any fellow Canadians who are watching tonight. But it won the annual Toronto Star short story contest. So it's a big Canadian newspaper. They run a short story contest every year. And I was very excited to be this year's winner with this story. So here we go. I sent this one into the Toronto Star specifically because I felt like it captured a lot of the feelings of living in Toronto, and I think probably of living in a lot of big cities right now. So hopefully this will resonate with some of you elsewhere as well. It's called Free to a Good Home. All right, I'm just going to. All right, Free to a Good Home. Gemma finds the dollhouse on a bright summer Tuesday while walking home from her barista job. It's sitting on someone's front lawn with a sign that reads, Free to a Good Home. The dollhouse has 3 floors and 12 little plasticky rooms. Kitchen, dining room, living room, pantry, bathroom, nursery, study, garage. 4 bedrooms with little pink and blue gingham check curtains. It's chock full of colorful furniture, and there are little pictures printed on the walls, cats and landscapes and flowers. She's always wanted to live in a sprawling, colorful home like that. Walls and furniture bright as a fever dream. A home big enough and interesting enough to have a party in it that no one would forget. She could take this house home to her own apartment, a basement studio with uneven floors and a streaky off-white paint job and a perpetual mold problem. The mental image is funny in the way a car accident is funny. Like, my dolls live a better life than I do. Ha ha. Her best friend Katie could probably use that in her stand-up routine. Gemma picks the dollhouse up. The grubby little dolls with matted hair rattle around inside of it as Gemma walks it back to her place. For once, she's got a plan for her evening. Gemma has known she can shrink for about a year. She'd been sitting on her couch watching the Instagram story of a high school friend who was trying to make it big as some kind of beauty influencer. This one was some kind of faux relatable video about like first date outfits. And Gemma cringed in such powerful secondhand embarrassment that she wanted to just shrink away. And then she did, growing smaller and smaller until her legs lifted off the floor. Her bun shrank down and her hair elastic unraveled until it was draped around her torso like a hula hoop. Her body slipped in between the cushions of her couch and she fell down between them like a quarter or a set of keys. And then she grew smaller still, like a crumb or a bedbug. She was naked. None of her clothes shrank with her. She thought for one heart-stopping moment that she was going to shrink away into nothing, but then she stabilized herself and grew back to her normal size. And it didn't take her long after that to realize that shrinking was like another sense she possessed, something she could turn on at will. Katie heard her story and immediately said that Gemma should make an OnlyFans. This is just the kind of person Katie is. And Gemma wasn't opposed to the idea. Both her cafe job and her copywriting side hustle have been giving her less work than she needs, and her landlord has been trying to kick her out for months. Half-hearted lies about his daughter moving in, an illegal rent increase that Katie helped her contest. Gemma could use some extra cash for sure. But the problem is Gemma just wasn't very good at it. Not good at taking pictures and videos of herself, especially when she was small. And even worse with the whole marketing aspect, which she quickly learned is mostly what online sex work is. So when she tried, very few people subscribed, and those that did all just wanted to know her trick. Was it camera angles that made her look small? Photoshop? Maybe it would have been different if she could grow bigger, big enough to step on things. People seem to pay more for that. Anyway, she gave up after a couple of months. Gemma arrives home and sets the dollhouse down on the tiled floor of her apartment. She takes off her clothes, her earrings too. That's a mistake she's only going to make once, and the choker around her neck. And she begins to shrink. She shrinks until she's the same size as the dolls from this dollhouse, which she'd piled in a heap on the floor. They look like corpses in a horror movie, limbs bent wrong. She needs clothes for when she's this size, but it would probably be a good idea to wash the ones on the dolls before she puts them on. It would probably be good to wash the whole house, honestly. Maybe in her bathtub because the house is too big for her sink. But she's too excited not to give it a little walkthrough first. Gemma starts in the kitchen. The little fake appliances have a surprising amount of detail. Knobs on the oven and buttons on the dishwasher. Gemma doesn't have a full oven, just a glass stovetop and then a microwave. She sinks into one of the dollhouse kitchen chairs, facing away from the open fourth wall, and imagines sunlight pouring in through the windows and bread in the oven, and she and Katie and some of their other college friends all drinking coffee around the large round table. Someone making a joke about some new band, and then everyone getting up and dancing, the room warm with bodies and the smell of yeast. When Gemma first downloaded TikTok, she mostly used it to watch ASMR videos while she was stoned. But now, a week after she dragged the dollhouse home, her For You page is entirely taken up with videos of making miniatures. Over bright trending song clips, people with slim white hands and perfect nails make tiny chairs and beach umbrellas and fake plates of fried eggs. They all use little pairs of tweezers to put everything in place. So Gemma rummages through her rarely used makeup bag to find the little nail care set her mother gave her for Christmas last year. She goes to the dollar store and buys glue and fabric and little sheets of craft foam, sewing needles and electrical tape, beads and string and embroidery floss. She even finds a little package of string lights, which will look nice crisscrossing her new smooth miniature bedroom ceiling. When she comes back home, her landlord, Carl, is inside her apartment. He's not supposed to enter her unit without telling her first, according to Katie. Gemma really needs to move out. Every time she sees him, her heart migrates to her throat and lodges there like a stone. Jenna, says Carl, I just did a little impromptu inspection. Hope you don't mind. Gemma smiles. She grits her teeth, tries to remember if she has any weed in the house right now. Of course not. There might be someone in soon to do a more formal inspection, he says, for property values assessment. So please have the place a bit cleaner for that, okay? Gemma smiles and nods, stammers out a cold sweat apology. He doesn't properly shut the door behind him and it slams open again, the doorknob making a small dent in the wall. She should really clean her place tonight. She used to be better at that, but lately it always just seems so large, insurmountable. She's only good at cleaning her dollhouse now. Katie freaks out when she hears about the landlord visit. She thinks Carl is plotting something. She sends Gemma articles all day about tenant rights, which Gemma knows she should read, and apartment listings, which Gemma knows she should look at. But during her break at the cafe, Gemma pulls up Facebook Marketplace and starts looking at dollhouses instead. She finds one that's made to look kind of Victorian, with busy, flowery wallpaper and curving, dark wooden furniture. She isn't sure about the wallpaper, but what she likes about it really is the lights. Actual electric lights wired into the walls and ceilings, so you can light it up like one of those fake houses in a Christmas display. She messages the seller, and he says he'll trade it for some beer if she comes to pick it up. So she takes 2 buses out to the suburbs to meet him, and then carries the dollhouse home on her lap. She's already planning a nice evening in. When she first learned about her ability, Gemma tried to teach it to Katie. She imagined the two of them shrinking together, maybe sneaking into places while they were small. She and Katie hooked up once, so the naked part wouldn't have been that weird. But Katie couldn't do it. More to the point, Gemma couldn't even explain how to do it. It was like explaining how to see or how to breathe. It sucks because the big problem with getting smaller is that she's doing it all alone. If only there were more things she could do while smaller. Watching movies or TV episodes on her phone works fine, but swiping between TikToks or Hinge profiles takes too much force to be enjoyable. Reading and replying to messages on her phone is harder, but she can do it, pressing her whole palm to each letter on her keypad. And video calls are easy, at least with people who know about her ability. But she can't be with anyone else because none of them will fit into the dollhouse. Those houses are for her and her alone. Still, she has a routine now. Arrive back from work and immediately shrink down to go to her real home. One of her real homes, she should say. She's now got 8 dollhouses lined up in 2 rows on her floor, a whole little street. What if she made herself smaller and then made miniatures at that scale and then got smaller again, like a one-woman nesting doll, different houses for different Gemmas, all fitting together like measuring cups or mixing bowls. Maybe she could build a whole city like that in her apartment. Cities within cities within cities. This is what she's thinking about, watching TV on her phone in her original plastic house, wearing scratchy clothes meant for a knockoff Barbie, when the door to her apartment opens and in comes Carl. Her phone is playing some dating show where everyone is stuck in a beachfront mansion together. Gemma has been imagining the whole cast here with her in her own plastic house, sitting by the rooftop pool, filming catty little interviews in the pink kitchen. What's that sound? Says a voice Gemma doesn't recognize. Gemma gets up and pushes against her phone screen with the palm of her hand, exerting as much pressure as she can until Netflix pauses. Then she stands very still in her tiny living room, heart pounding. Is she home? Says the new voice. It's a woman. From Gemma's vantage point, all she can see are her shoes, sensible low heels, unscuffed and shining. Jenna, says Carl. Jenna doesn't respond. After a moment, Carl says, we're good. Maybe it was coming from upstairs. All right, says the woman, and Jenna lets out a breath she doesn't realize she was holding. So this is the basement unit, and you're renting it for $1,700? $1,650, says Carl. Do some renos, and it could be netting you much more than that, says the woman. It's just a matter of staging it right. Their shoes slap along the tiled floor as they walk towards the kitchenette. Then her bathroom door is pulled open with a creak. Gemma cringes. She can't remember when she last cleaned the toilet. So you keep saying, says Carl, but the problem is, the current tenant, I know, you weren't wrong. This place is a bit of a disaster. She's not the best, says Carl. They both return to the main room. Jenna can see their ankles outside of the dollhouse window. Also, the dollhouses, do you know what's up with that? Says the woman. And as she does so, she bends down and starts looking in the dollhouse windows. Gemma drops to the floor behind her craft foam couch. She shrinks herself down until she's even smaller, and the doll clothes are falling off of her. She's shaking, her limbs tense, her whole body alert. The woman rises to her feet. The dollhouses are a new thing, says Carl. Says the woman. You know, I think we could do something with this. She pushes the dollhouse beside Gemma with her foot, kicking it so it's more lopsided, then repeats this with a couple more. What are you doing? Says Carl. You know, convince the rental board that this place is a health issue, fire hazard, tripping hazard, whatever. They'll fast track your eviction application. She reaches into one of Gemma's houses and strews its contents on the floor. Little wooden bookshelves and plastic vases of flowers. This place could be going for at least $2,000 with a new tenant if you just put in a new kitchen backsplash and some better lighting. For a moment, Gemma expects Carl to protest, but all he says is, yeah, no, you're right. And then the woman starts snapping pictures. 1, 2, 3, her phone camera making quick little clicking sounds in time with the beat of Gemma's heart. That night, Gemma puts on music and pretends she's about to host a party in her newest house, a modular set of plastic boxes that snap together in different configurations. She's just getting everything set up. Soon, all her party guests will arrive, and they'll all bring bottles of wine, which she can put down in the lowest level in a room she's decided will be a wine cellar. There's a whole room just for people to put their coats. There are rooms for people to dance, and rooms for people to have strange, intimate conversations that last deep into the night. Gemma is going to hug everyone when they leave, and she'll be tipsy but not too drunk. And if anyone can't get home again safely, she'll say it's not a problem. She has spare bedrooms they can crash in. All night long, people will come up to her and say, nice place you got here. The music pounds. Gemma sits down on a stiff miniature couch and looks out the plastic window at the feet of her secondhand IKEA kitchen island. The whole thing feels a little too much like a goodbye party. The next day, Gemma comes home from the cafe to find all her dollhouses put out onto the street in a row. They look nice like that, like they have little front lawns. The first one she found, the plastic one with all the little dolls inside, is at one end, which is kind of fitting. Maybe this house is supposed to spend its whole life on one curb or another, free to a good home. On her front door is an eviction notice. It says something about unsanitary living conditions, fire hazard, no clear pathways through the dwelling in case of emergency. Gemma laughs, but her laugh, like everything about her, grows smaller and smaller the more she thinks about it. The end. Oh, sorry, Laura. Thank you for all of your reactions. I was really enjoying them.
Oh, that was so good. I love them both. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks for having me.
It is great to have you here. And, you know, I was so excited earlier that I could actually pronounce Trans Lifeline. I neglected to actually talk about them. So let's just do that now. Alice Gauntley just read for Trans Lifeline. Trans Lifeline is a grassroots hotline and microgrants organization serving and run by the trans community. It offers direct emotional and financial support to trans people in crisis. Microgrants help fund name changes, advocacy, and other important and expensive parts of trans existence. Trans Lifeline envisions a world where trans people have the connection, economic security, and care everyone needs and deserves, free of prisons and police. You can learn more at translifeline.org. And I also need to let you know what Maria Haskins is reading for. Maria Haskins is reading for the Greyhaven Exotic Bird Sanctuary. Greyhaven Exotic Bird Sanctuary is a nonprofit society whose purpose is to provide rescue and protection for parrots, which Maria knows a lot about. Look her up on social media sometime for some great pictures. She didn't write that part, I just thought I'd add it in. Through its adoption program, Greyhaven strives to place parrots in new loving homes. Greyhaven provides education and support to parrot guardians and the general public. Greyhaven opposes the breeding and selling of parrots through pet stores, bird marts, or via the internet. You can learn more at Greyhaven, spelled with an E, the English way, greyhavenbirds.com. Two very worthy organizations that I'm glad we got to mention. Thank you for recommending them. And between our stories, we tend to just sort of need a moment to pause and let the first story sink in, go for the next, wait for the next one. Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, Alice Gauntley. And now, Maria Haskins.
Hi.
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 Maria Haskins is a Swedish-Canadian writer and reviewer of speculative fiction. Her short story collection, Six Dreams and About the Train and Other Stories, is out from one of the publishing houses I always need to ask how to pronounce. Is it Trepidatio or Trepidatio?
I actually don't know because it's one of those words I don't think I've ever heard anybody say. I've just read it.
I'm gonna say Trepidatio because it's
yeah,
like
do that. I'll
Trepidatio Publishing.
Yeah.
Maria very thoughtfully went with Brain Jar for her next upcoming book because Brain Jar is a much easier press name to say. Probably had nothing to do with it. Sorry, Trepidatio folks. I hear nothing but good about you, honest. Brain Jar is going to be publishing Girls and Wolves.
Wolves and Girls.
Wolves and Girls? Wolves
it's
and
the
girls.
same thing, but the other way around. Yeah.
It is. And okay. Wolves and Girls. Sorry. Sorry, Brain Jar. I'm apologizing to all the small presses today. Wolves and Girls. I believe it's later this month.
Yeah, July 25th.
What? July 25th is so soon.
I know.
Maria's short fiction has appeared in The Best Horror of the Year, Volume 13, Black Static, Interzone, Fireside, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Cast of Wonders, Shimmer, Flash Fiction Online, Gamut, Capricious, Kaleidotrope, Pseudopod, and Elsewhere. The Deadlands is very fond of Maria for both fiction and nonfiction. You can find those there. Maria currently lives just outside Vancouver with a husband, 2 kids, several birds, and a snake, and a very large black dog. Maria, welcome back to Story Hour.
Thank you so much for having me here again. Thank you.
It is our pleasure.
It's always great to be here, and I love the stories. I'm all like, ooh, these stories are so great.
Canada's doing itself proud tonight.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's Canadian content.
Right.
So I'm reading, the first story that I'm reading tonight is actually from that new short story collection that's coming out on July 25th from Brain Jar Press, Wolves and Girls. And it's an older story of mine. It's a flash fiction story called Big Bad. And that's the first story I'll be reading. Big Bad. You wake up slumped over the steering wheel. Raising your head, you look through the smashed windshield. It's dark and it's snowing and you've hit a tree. Your headlights are still on, white light reflecting off the snow. You see the dented hood, the jagged edges of the broken windshield, and everywhere inside the car, blood. It's slick on your hands, on the shards of glass. There's glass and blood in the back seat too, as if an animal crashed into the car and scrambled around before escaping. You try to open the door, but the car is leaning on its side in the snow. Cautiously, you clamber across the passenger seat, pushing the other door open with your feet. Standing in the snow, you try to remember where you are, who you are, anything, nothing. On the floor on the passenger side is a flashlight and a shotgun. You realize you know how to use the shotgun as soon as you pick it up, your hands remembering what your mind doesn't. Instinctively, you pat your jacket pockets. There's ammo in one of them. You load the shotgun. The motion, the feel of the weapon and the slugs, it's familiar. You've done this before, but you can't remember when or why. Around you, the world is silent and cold as death. The highway is a smudge of asphalt between banks of dirty snow. Beyond that are the woods, dark trees, shadows beneath. Spread wide above it all is the night sky, a multitude of stars winking down at you, unconcerned. You start walking, following a trail of blood-stained tracks that leads away from the car. With every step, you try and fail to settle your breathing and your pounding heart. There are more tracks in the snowbank where the illumination from the headlights ends. You knew you'd find those tracks, even if you don't remember how you knew. Someone, something, dragged itself toward the trees. You follow. At the forest's edge, you hesitate, but the tracks lead in beneath the branches. You try to remember why you feel compelled to go deeper into these woods, but nothing comes to mind. All you know is that you're cold, that your head and hands are bleeding, that your ribs hurt like hell. At least the shotgun in your hands is heavy and reassuring. In this world you woke up in, you know nothing for certain except how to use this weapon. A sound cuts through the stillness. Howling. It's coming from behind you, from the road. Wolf? No, wolves. The fear in your belly is familiar, like you've been here before, alone, in the dark, with the wolves howling. You consider the shotgun, the slugs in your pocket, how many wolves might be out there, how fast you would be able to reload. But in the end, you run. You run in between the trees, with the howling driving you deeper into the night. The snow is heavy and your body hurts. There are glowing eyes behind you, fleet paws following through the snow. You don't know how long you've been running when you see the light. You're tired and faltering by then, but the light keeps you going. There's a cabin, hardly more than a shack, and the light in its windows is the yellow glow of candle flame and hearth. And somehow, it too is familiar. You stumble up the steps and bang on the door. It swings open. Rushing in, you close and lock the door behind you, as if that will keep the darkness out, as if this flimsy wood and hasp will keep the wolves at bay. Turning around, something about the place makes you uneasy. The smell of firewood, rancid meat, and rot. It's familiar, right? Too familiar. There's an old woman sitting by the fireplace watching you, smiling wide, a grin that is too toothy for her face. Her ratty bathrobe is stained with blood, and her cheeks are scratched and cut. You think about the car, shards of glass, blood. Yes, that's it. You recognize me now. Do you remember the first time you came here? I do. What big teeth you have, you said to me when I greeted you at the door. You were just a welfare whelp in a red coat from the charity shop sent here by your mom because she couldn't handle taking care of you anymore. She was a mess, your mom, a drunk, a lush, but she knew enough to send you to me, to Grandma, because Grandma takes care of all lost whelps, one way or another. Child, you're shaking, standing there with that big old shotgun, not knowing whether to lower or to raise it. Do you remember driving here? Do you remember what you planned to do? Find me? Kill me? Seemed like you could do it, didn't it? That you could put an end to the nightmares that have haunted you since you ran away from me, from us, all those years ago. When you saw me standing by the highway in the dusk, wearing my best fur and claws, waiting to welcome you home, I know you recognized me. That's why you gunned the engine and cut me down. Foolish child, as if that could kill me, as if you didn't know you needed a silver slug to do it. All those years fearing me, hating me, and still you hesitate, even now. Are you here to kill me? Or are you here to join the pack because you've realized the world out there is too vast, too cold, too lonely for someone like you, like us? I asked you to join us once, and tonight I'm asking you again. The pack is all around us, waiting for you to choose. You don't have enough slugs for all of them, but don't worry. Soon we'll all be family here. And so that was one of my stories from Wolves and Girls. And I'm also going to read my next story is from a story. I think I wrote it for my Patreon. And I think I've published it right now. I've never read this one before. So I'm going to read this. My second story is new, sort of. It's not going to be in the new short story collection either because it's so new. So I'm going to read this one. It's called Night Terror. Let's see here. I'm just trying to find it. There we go. It's 3 a.m. when Martina wakes up because Thomas is crawling into bed with her. The bedroom is dark and she's groggy with sleep. She knows she ought to tell him to go back to his own bed, walk him down the hall to his room, get him settled with his snuggle blanket and stuffed elephant. But she's reluctant to move from the comfortable, warm nest beneath the covers. If Paul was here, he'd do it, but he's away. She knows he'd scold her for being soft, but surely one night of co-sleeping won't be the end of the world. Hey, buddy, she mumbles, can't sleep? Thomas only snuffles in reply, as if he's been crying, or maybe he's catching yet another cold. In the dark, she can feel the 3-year-old's familiar slight body wriggling beside her. He's shivering, his hands cold as ice as he grabs onto her, knitting his fingers into her pajamas, clinging to her as if terrified. What's up, Toto? She asks, reverting to his nickname. Thomas's dark eyes glint in the faint light from the street outside the apartment, his voice wavering. Mom, someone came into my room, he whispers. I told you they... Martina sighs and gives his tense and trembling body a squeeze. He used to be such a good sleeper, but lately he's had nightmares insisting there's something under the bed or in the closet or outside the window. Martina blames the kids at preschool. The new preschool. Some of them are 4 and 5 years old with older siblings capable of all sorts of mischief. You're dreaming, that's all. Don't worry, you're safe. His fingers dig through the flannel into her skin. No, Mom, I heard them. They opened the door and came inside. I had to run. They're still in there with my Fant. And now he's crying. Icy fingers dug into her flesh, tiny chest heaving with sobs. Martina shuts her eyes in the dark and knows she has no choice. Okay, Toto, let's go check it out. Come on. But Thomas won't come. First, he refuses to get out of her bed, and then he refuses to walk. He's shaking and shivering and won't go anywhere unless she carries him. She hefts him in her arms onto her hip, realizing how much bigger he's grown lately, his legs dangling, his wet face snuggled against her neck as she pads down the hall. The apartment is quiet apart from the usual night noises, muffled sounds of traffic from the street outside, the hum of the appliances, the gurgling of pipes when someone in the building flushes a toilet. Thomas's room is just down the hall, on the other side of the bathroom, his door festooned with stickers and a poster of a gaping, googly-eyed Elmo. Let's have a look then, she says, with Thomas's damp face still pressed against her shoulder, while he takes huffing, snuffling breaths. She grabs the handle to push the door open, but it's locked. Locked. Dread flashes through Martina like a spark of lightning, racing through her bones and flesh, prickling through her skin as she tries again to turn the handle. It still won't budge. Heart pounding, breath trapped in her chest, she stands stock still in the darkness, and now she hears it. Movement. The muffled sound of shuffling steps on the other side of the locked door. I told you, Thomas breathes against her neck. I told you, Mom, they're in there. They got in, they got inside. Martina tries to think it through, tries to fight off the dread, tries to decide whether to break the door down, whether to call 911, or whether to call Paul and wake him in whatever swanky hotel he's sleeping right now. Then there's a voice from inside Thomas's room. The voice is high-pitched, panicked, familiar. Mom, help. Someone tried to get into my room again, but I locked the door, but they kept trying, but I won't let them in, Mom. I won't let them inside. I promise I won't. I'm scared, Mom. Help me. It's Thomas's voice. Thomas dissolving into sobs. Thomas inside the locked room. Martina stands in the darkness with the weight of the child, her Thomas, in her arms. He's clinging tightly to her, damp face still pressed against her neck. It's Thomas. She's holding Thomas. It's Thomas's fingers digging into her rib cage, Thomas's face pressed against the soft skin below her ear, his breath wet and clammy on her skin. She turns her head awkwardly and tries to look at him, but his features are obscured in the hallway shadows, eyes glinting as if reflecting a light she cannot see. Mom, are you there? Thomas's voice is a whisper now, so close, just on the other side of the door. Martina tries to let go of the child in her arms, of the Thomas she is holding, but even without the support of her hands and arms, he hangs onto her like an animal, his fingers sharp and crooked now, blunt preschooler nails like talons. She would scream, but there is no sound coming from her lips. There is only a choked sound sticking in her throat as she watches his small face in the darkness, the glimmer of eyes, the wet gleam of a mouth, the sharp glint of teeth. I told you, Thomas murmurs, and she can't tell anymore whether the voice is coming from this side of the door or from inside the locked room. I told you they were real. The end. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Whew. My goodness.
Thank you.
You're great.
Thank you. Daniel, what an incredible pair of writers we've had tonight. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And you know, they went very harmoniously into one another, despite the differences in style and content. I don't know. I mean, Canada's a big place, so I'm not going to say it's because they're both Canadian, you know.
No, you can say
But definitely some sensibilities shared. Very artful.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Well, Daniel and I are here pretty much every week. So next week, we're going to be here with Gwendolyn Keist and Sam Rebeline. I do recommend checking storyhour2020.com. Can be nice for checking last minute changes and, you know, planning your Wednesdays a little bit in advance, although not really a secret. If you do happen to miss a Wednesday, you can go to the Story Hour page on Facebook and you can just look and see which ones you might want to watch. Maybe this one a few more times. I know I will. So Just a little tip there. Maria Haskins, Alice Gauntley, thank you both so much for a wonderful evening of stories. This has really been excellent. Thank you to my co-host, Daniel Marcus, without whom there would be no story hour, without whom, who knows what our Wednesdays would look like. And thank you to all of you who are here right now in the Zoom, here right now on Facebook, and those of you who are going to watch at some point in the future. Because as long as you watch, and as long as you take in these stories, we're all here in the same story hour. Good night.